Okay, so welcome again, everyone, to our discussion this time. So, as you see, the recovery process, the rebuilding of a country, of a city, involves many different entities, many different actors, many different specialists. That's why we also have today quite multidisciplinary panel, experts on Bosnia and Herzegovina, and also experts from Ukraine. So let me just very quickly introduce our speakers, and I will start from those who are online. And you can also wave your hand or say hi, so we know who is who. And so I will start with Helen. Helen Walasek. She is a heritage researcher, and she wrote an amazing book which is called Bosnia and the Destruction of Cultural Heritage. Hi, Helen, and thank you very much. Thank you very much for being with us. We also have Anastasiya Ponomaryova. Anastasiya, she's an architect, she's a researcher and co-founder of agency Urban Curator and project CO-HATY, and many others. So I promise to be very short. So Anastasiya, thank you so much for all your hard work that you are doing also now in Ukraine during the active war. We also have Elmira Abdelimova-Cheyhoz. Hi, Elmira, thank you for being with us. She is a project manager and expert at the Crimean Institute for Strategic Studies in Ukraine. Also, thank you so much.
Thank you very much. It's a privilege for me to participate in this meeting. Thank you.
Thank you, Elmira. And we also have Mirela Mulajic-Handan. She is a very well-experienced cultural heritage specialist, and she works as an executive officer, assistant for heritage, commissioned to preserve national monuments in Bosnia and Herzegovina. She has an experience in this field for over 30 years. Mirela, thank you so much for being with us today. We really value your insights and your inputs. We will also get another speaker a bit later because Dr. Haris Piplas is now currently stuck somewhere in the airport, but he is a very great contributor to this discussion, as he was actually in the siege of Sarajevo when he was a kid. And later he started researching this topic. He became expert in urban design and planning, and he is now leading the project which is called Reactivate Sarajevo, and he also wrote his dissertation on Sarajevo. So we are really hoping that he will join us a bit later. And now I will also introduce our offline guests here, also two Ukrainians. And we have Olyana Jorlak. She is an architect, civil rights activist, and co-founder of NGO Save Kvita Ukraine. Olyana, thank you so much for all your hard work that you are doing. It's really much appreciated. And last but not least, Serhiy Ladik, an architect, urban planner. He is leading urban research department in NGO Map Renovation. Map Renovation is the co-host of this event, so thank you so much as well for your hard work. We just saw your work that you are doing in Ukraine. All right, so since we have so many different experts from different fields and we have a very limited time, we try to logically divide this conversation in 3 blocks. So the first block will be on survival, preservation, and recovering during the war, because we have this experience in Bosnia and Herzegovina. And we also have this experience now in Ukraine during the active war. We are already engaged in these activities. The second block will be dedicated to the topics of post-war recovery. So here we will rely on the experience of our experts on Bosnia and Herzegovina and the path that they have already done. And the last block will be perhaps the most inspirational also for us, for Ukrainians, because we will talk about our future. We will talk about strategies and aspirations how do we envision the recovery process in Ukraine, and what are our dreams, what to do so we could go back home. And I will start this discussion with you, Helen. I would like to open up this with a question towards you. As I mentioned, there were already many activities happening during the active war in Bosnia and Herzegovina, and we know that many civil activists were involved, or just simple civilians were doing already something to preserve their culture, to preserve their heritage. Could you maybe tell us more about what were the ways citizens of Bosnia and Herzegovina tried to preserve and restore multicultural heritage, and how these practices they contributed to this post-war recovery?
Well, I would say, from what I experienced, Mirella may have different things that she knows, but it was very difficult during wartime to preserve things or to do anything, and of course, well, I don't know completely from Ukraine, but there was also this problem that some of the people, for instance, at the National Museum, they went to the side that were perpetrating aggression. So, so it was not very clear cut. It was also very difficult to actually preserve things during war and actively do things. There were active things to rescue collections, for instance, monuments, buildings. That's another question altogether. So there were many efforts to rescue artifacts, many different initiatives. But I would say to preserve a building or a monument, a built thing, it was, I don't think it was even possible. I don't know. What do you think, Mirella?
First of all, I would like to say that before the war and during the war, I was working in the Republic Institute for Protection of Cultural and Natural Heritage of Bosnia and Herzegovina. Just before the war started, 1-2 days before, we from the Institute managed to take our documentation. That was documentation about cultural heritage that was collected and surveyed for 50 years. So we managed to put it on the safe place in a central bank in Sarajevo in safe. So that was the first. After that 1 or 2 days, the Sarajevo was under the siege, and it was impossible to go out or to come in. So
Exactly.
I know that we have organized ourselves together with the people from the other cultural institutions to collect beasts and sculptures actually around the town, and to put them also on the safe place. What else we did? Yeah, as I remember, the flag with the blue shield was put on one of the buildings, actually on the Ali Pasha Mosque in Sarajevo, but it was target for the destruction. You have to say it was damaged. Actually, it was not destroyed. But it depends on the nature of the war. The war in Bosnia and Herzegovina, the target was actually ethnic cleansing.
Exactly. Yeah.
So when your target is ethnic cleansing, then you kill or put the people into the camps or force evict them, and then if you want to be sure that they are not coming back, then you are destroying their monuments. Those monuments that aggressor think that those people are connected with. So, for example, mostly endangered monuments were those from the Ottoman period because they belong to the Bosniaks, to the Muslim population actually. So, but it was not the only mosques that are destroyed. Also, the whole nuclei of the old town from the Ottoman period were destroyed. I also have to mention that in those places, like in West Herzegovina, also Serbs Orthodox churches were destroyed. We have example in Mostar that cathedral, Serb Orthodox cathedral was totally destroyed.
Thank you, Mirella, and thank you, Helen, for this information. I think we can also relate when we see when Russians are shelling on the cultural objects, and I mentioned in the introduction that now we have over 700 objects of heritage that was damaged or are destroyed already. But of course, we don't know the exact number because of the occupied territories and because this documenting of the damage is also a long process. So my next question I would like to ask to our Ukrainian guests here, to Uliana and Anastasiya. We now experience that there are many different initiatives, many different projects ongoing in Ukraine coming from the civil society actors. They are massively engaged in the reconstruction, in the recovery. So maybe you can also tell about your experience, what your organizations, what your projects are working on, and also give us a little bit of context, what is happening in Ukraine in with regards to the civil society and how civilians themselves are addressing the challenges of the massive destruction and the lack of housing in Ukraine. So maybe, Uliana, you can start since you're sitting here. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Hello, everyone. I wanted to tell you about people who start to do something as soon as first Russian bombs came to Ukraine. First building was destroyed. These people come and start to keep this part of this building. Ukrainians start to answer on all of issues in our country from the first time. Sometime later, these people start to organize to different kinds of initiative. Of course, it's initiative about different kinds of housing. I think that Nesta will talk about that more with her incredible project CO-HATY and else. And so we have a different wave of this action from Ukrainian people. And then they start to collecting different initiatives, start to do any kind of I'm a little bit tired after my way here from Ukraine. So they do different things. It's about to keep demolished, destroyed building, to try to create, renovate, reconstruct all spaces, buildings for different issues for people. Also to protect now as cases which Ksenia told us previously, to protect our heritage, to make different protective construction for monuments or just cover buildings, cover windows and something like that. And then people start to research more strategic ways to understand what had happened around, to make different kinds of researching materials and try to work with our state with our government, with local governments in different communities, work with international and local foundation and different kinds of humanitarian organization to combine all ways to help us, to help themselves. So every person in Ukraine became this activist, became this visionary person who tried to do all the best. So, yeah.
Thank you, Lana. Anastasia, maybe you can add something also. Tell us about the project and the organization that you are co-leading or you have initiated. What you are doing and what are other initiatives in Ukraine that you would like to introduce to us.
So, well, that's really true that many like non-governmental organizations, many initiatives in Ukraine are very active now, including CO-HATY, the project I'm working with, including Juliana's project and many others. And there are a couple of reasons for that I would like to share with you, and maybe we could discuss if there is any point I'm missing in our action. Of course, the first one is a state of urgency. But we are, as a people who are care about other Ukrainians, temporarily vulnerable, forcibly displaced, we cannot just stay passive, especially in the context of understanding that people might consider the availability of, if we're talking about the house in this sense of care, consider the escape while they're experiencing siege or even occupation. Access to the house they might consider as a very important argument for them to start a relocation, to start the process of saving themselves. And their architecture becomes sort of life-changing, life-saving affordances, life-saving tools for people, and it's impossible to not act in the context. So the urgency is quite visible, is quite present in Ukraine, and I think each architect might understand that. At least we are in CO-HATY did that, and that's why our project started in the middle of March last year, of course. Another aspect is that we are dealing in a context where government does very little regarding this, helping vulnerable people to accommodate, to find new accommodation, to find a shelter. So that's true that some municipalities have been doing very good, but in general we have a quite weak support of states in that, and quite a small experience in social housing. So I will provide you the small numbers from Ivano Kids where CO-HATY has been implementing that. Again, back into March 2022, the city had less than 100 beds for social purposes, would be used for forcibly displaced people. So, that's the very small numbers, and experience is very, very not very developed in Ukraine. So that's also another thing. But also the high level of solidarity is really triggering initiatives to continue to work, because we as an NGO, we often rely on that kind of labor, that kind of social capital, let me use this term. So when the crisis appeared, the war started, the full invasion started, this solidarity is become more visible and present. So in fact, I like to say that I think it's very misleading to say that the crisis is opportunities. I have to say that the solidarity, which might be enhanced by the crisis, is opportunity. And of course, for our NGO sector, is a great opportunity to to do the participatory design. Yeah, we've been trying to do for many years. And I think the last point is this intention to preserve as a counter reaction to this ongoing demolition. Because we do understand that with this value of space, we will just remain this space as a physical thing, yeah, as a four walls assets, yeah, and we need to preserve some other senses, cultural, our identity, to really confront with this four wall space, which could be even our safe house in occupied territory, which we don't really value anymore, yeah. So I think that the meaning of culture really also help us to act and to with intention to preserve it. But I think it's a slightly different topic. Yeah. So I'm trying to say that yeah, we do a lot, but this is have a lot of reason for that.
Anastasiya, if I may just make a follow-up question. You mentioned about your organization CO-HATY, but I don't think that our audience actually knows what kind of incredible job you are doing. So maybe you can say just a few words about your project, so we all know what you're working on.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I could say like on behalf of the big group, because I'm just one member, participated very actively first half of the year, but it's now ongoing project leading mostly by NGO MetaLab, an environmental organization MetaLab. So it started as an initiative of architects who did understand that it's time to really help people to find a shelter. And it started with a refurbishment of dormitories in the western part of Ukraine, where like many forcibly displaced people found a space, a more or less secure space for them. I think it's a very vibrant project, but I like it mostly for that value it brings to the housing, to the way we build our house. That CO-HATY cares a lot about the way spaces are built, like mostly in a participatory way. So it's we engage people, we really treat them as a temporarily vulnerable, as those who are really need help now, but not necessarily need it all the time. So we try to really engage them and empower in a way like we sometimes we share responsibilities. They could join us during the refurbishment. They could even take more responsibilities if they want. For instance, MetaLab hired 5 people from among the volunteer groups to work on the project. So they are now sharing responsibility as a real team member. And I think among other fantastic things which done by MetaLab and CO-HATY, I think this is one of the most powerful that really change a little bit this perception of humanitarian project as something which could be done by others who are in power, in a more vulnerable, not in a privileged position, towards those who are vulnerable. And we are trying to say by our project that these people need time to start over their life, but they could be super active. And we always advocate to do not the social kitchen, as a very common help provided by municipalities and international organizations, but to do the workshops, to create a space where people can really develop their skills and earn money and share the knowledge. And that's for us, housing is something more than just a shelter. It's the space where people start over their life, integrate with community, obtain some new skills and moving on.
Thank you, Anastasiya, and thanks to your entire team for this incredible work that you're doing. Preservation of culture and fight for justice has also another dimension, which is about documenting crimes, monitoring the violations against damaged or stolen or looted objects. And here we have Mira, who's actually working on this. I know that you are tracing the violations on the occupied territories, which is super interesting. Can you tell us more? How is it going in Ukraine with documenting these crimes, and what is perhaps known violations that you can share with us happening in the occupied Crimea?
Mhm. Thank you very much. Dear colleagues, our organization is a non-government organization named Crimean Institute for Strategic Studies. And we have two directions of our activity. First of all, it's the promotion of Crimean Tatar culture, cultural heritage, history, and tradition. Crimean Tatar people is the indigenous people of Ukraine. And second, the main specialization of our organization is issue of documentation of violations of international humanitarian law and international human rights law in sphere of cultural heritage protection, according to 1954 Convention for the Protection of Cultural Heritage or Cultural Property in the event of armed conflict and its two protocols. The whole world remembers the photos and footage of destroyed Ukrainian museums, churches, built heritage sites, etc. But I hope you are aware that we also have misappropriations, lootings, export or illicit export of cultural objects from Ukrainian occupied territories to Russia, and the decontextualization of cultural heritage and historical narratives. The last one is typical for Crimea, as well as the destroying the ancient Muslim mural or the implementing the destructive reconstruction of the Bosnian Palace. The early years of the Russian-Ukrainian armed conflict from 2014 to 2021 were marked by change of ownership of cultural property and institution in which they are stored. And for example, I can share with you one very important number. More than 500,000 Crimean museum items are included in the state catalogue of the Museum Fund of the Russian Federation. More than 12,000 monuments of history and culture of Crimea are included in the state register of objects of the cultural heritage of the Russian Federation. The second violation is the illicit export and removals of museum items from the territory of occupied Crimea to Russian Federation, and we were able to trace more than 1,000 museum items from Crimea that were presented in Russian Museum from 2014 to 2020. And the famous example, famous in this one, in negative sense, looting or removals of museum items from Kherson art museums to occupied Crimea, the prime examples of this illicit export and illicit removals. The third violations is illicit archaeological excavations, included illegal underwater archaeological explorations, and we have a very huge problem with localization of artifacts removed during these illegal archaeological excavations. And fourth, of course, it's alteration, reconstruction, or construction works on cultural heritage sites, monuments, complex that led to losses of authenticity of this object. And the most prime example of this violation is the so-called restoration works in the Bakhchisarai Han Palace. And you know that I remembered how hard it was to convince our international partners, lawyers, and cultural heritage protection specialists that so-called cultural heritage protection that allegedly Russia has tendered on the occupied territories often is disguised, covered violations and crimes. And now this case is being investigated by Prosecutor Office of Ukraine, and this case is used in the multi-jurisdictional litigations, and that's maybe this short information about documentation of violations against cultural heritage.
Thank you, Elmira. We are talking a lot about how it is important for people in order to return back to their homes to have their heritage, have their cultural objects protected or saved. In case of Bosnia and Herzegovina, we already heard that for people who are displaced, for people who are refugees, for them it was really essential when they are coming back to have these objects so they could, maintain their identity, so they could also ensure that the justice is served, that this historical truth is served. So maybe Mirala and Helen, you can tell us more about this phenomena that people who are whose identity are trying to erase through this ethnic cleansing that you just mentioned. For them, it's really essential to have this heritage back in home, and how international law ensured. Now I'm talking about Dayton Agreement. How it actually ensured or helped to restore to recover this object, so people who could restore their home, could restore their identity. So maybe Mirala, you can start with that.
Okay. So, as far as I know, the Dayton Peace Agreement is the only peace accord that included cultural heritage. It's included in one annex, Annex 8, about the Commission to Preserve National Monuments, establishing the State Institution Commission. Why? Because the existing institutions before the war were very weak. There were no experts in them, and then public trust was lost in the existing institutions. So it was important to establish a new one, independent institution, staffed with the professionals. So a Dayton Peace Agreement say what can be designated as national monuments. So the Commission was given the mandate to designate cultural heritage properties, movable or immovable, as national monuments, giving them the highest level of protection. And it well functioned. First of all, we established the preliminary list of national monuments, and then it was given the opportunity by the Annex 8 of Dayton Peace Agreement that everyone can submit a request. We call it petition. So any person can submit a request for some kind of cultural property, movable or immovable, to be designated as national monuments. It's up to the Commission to make valorization and to make a decision to designate it or not, if it according to the certain criteria. It was very important to establish criteria for designation and to be very, very professional. So that's how. Do you have more questions? That is just a brief.
Yeah, so maybe I would just do a follow up. Do you need to have some sort of classification that is recognized internationally? So how a simple person can claim that this is a monument?
Person we made form of the petition to be filled by the person. So the person just filled it with the essential information about the location, about some values, what people can see the values in that cultural property. And then it's up to the professionals when we receive such a kind of petition to make valorization, to validate that, and then to make decision. So the commission was actually staffed with 5 members of the commission, 3 domestic and 2 internationals, to help in that, and have its a professional staff made by architects, art historians, archaeologists, and so on, experts in the field of cultural heritage. Also, it was made free laws, by free laws, because the Bosnia free laws on implementation of the decisions of the Commission. By free because Bosnia is divided into 2 entities and Brčko district. So each of these entities and Brčko district has to adopt that law that support implementation of the Commission's decisions to designate some cultural property as national monuments. And according to that law, everyone should restrain of any action that could damage or any potential damage the national monument.
Thank you, Mirella. To Helen, I would like to reframe the question. So maybe you could tell us more. Why is it so important for people who are returning home to preserve this traditional character of their environment? One might say that people are returning to the places that are destroyed, and it's important, to establish some infrastructure first, some places to live, some vital means for their survival. But somehow people that were returning, they were really motivated to restore their heritage. What is so phenomenal about this?
Well, I think just some more background on the Dayton Agreement was that, for the first 5 years, if you wonder why it was under the mandate of UNESCO, and I'm not sure how much. I don't think they achieved very much, and they were very. They did not want to release any information, and about what they had listed as cultural property and important cultural property, and so it was only when the Bosnian government it was taken over as an institution by the Bosnian government 5 years after the end of the war, that a lot of them, I don't know when you started, Mirella, but that's when more action started, real action, and then they had to pass these laws because there was resistance to implementing the decisions. This is why there were these laws, but it was also a time when there was a lot of return of refugees, and this is what is so interesting. That was what they wanted. In many cases, that was the first thing they wanted to do, was rebuild, let's say, the mosque, the church, the cultural facilities, and they were being, depending on where they were returning to, there was quite often resistance to that from the local authorities who wouldn't give them permission. So there was this real force to use Annex 8 and the implementing Annex 8 to circumvent. Well, that's why these laws had to be passed, because of the resistance. It wasn't just, hey, great, let's do it. There was resistance to letting refugees return and they couldn't prevent them. Well, they did try to prevent them from returning in the first early years, but around 2001, there were a lot of people who were returning from where they'd been ethnically cleansed. And there was, in many cases, resistance to local resistance to letting them rebuild whatever, mosque, church, mainly mosques, I might say, and from my experience. So it was only because they were forced into implementing it. And now, of course, it's obviously evolved a lot since then, but that's why these three laws had to be passed, because there was resistance. But it was also, that's what many refugees did want. Returning ethnically cleansed people wanted to do was rebuild their important monuments of their identity.
Thank you, Helen. And indeed, we can trace this experience and these practices, and also in many different contexts of people that are returning back to their homes, that it's vital for them to see the traces of their heritage, of their culture, so they feel that they belong to this place and this place belongs to them. Since we don't have yet our another guest, Haris, he's still somewhere stuck in the airport or in the plane, we don't know. We will move to another block of questions regarding the strategies. Strategies or plans are also very important because currently there are many initiatives ongoing in Ukraine and abroad to help Ukraine rebuild, to plan some future projects. And I would like to hear, perhaps there are already some ideas about the strategies of the recovery process for the future. Maybe there are some main vectors. Anastasiya, if you can jump into this question, and if you know any indicators of what are the strategies for Ukraine, where we are heading in terms of the recovery field.
Well. For me, it's more easy to say from the perspective of housing, and this is something I'm working more deeply. And for me, there a good reconstruction, refurbishment projects, have to reflect on the idea of the home, which is important to discuss. I mean, I would like to share my vision, the vision I really like about the home, and I really want to see more people engaged in this discussion rather than discussion of laws or necessity to have peace now. I mean, for me, this is the most important things to discuss for the reconstruction. And I would like to share the vision of home, which connected to the area, not to the small space where people live and sleep, but to the area where a person feels secure, but also her culture, life and identity is very secure as well, not necessarily just a physical environment. And by understanding that, we will immediately think about the reconstruction plan as something which is not homogeneous by discipline, where the architect and the construction engineer are just playing the one role, one part of work, but we do need artists, we do need sociologists and anthropologists to tell us what creates this feeling of secure identity and secure culture in the area we feel belonging to. And I'm expecting that we will have more discussion on that, because what I'm witnessing now, that is more discussion about their physical rebuilding intentions and projects, where just the main focus is about square meters and this quantitative quantitative aspects of the project, but for me it's not the same not the what we want as Ukrainians, because many Ukrainians are really prove that they have a very strong connection to the area, to their homeland, because people, forcibly displaced people, are not really moving out of the region that far. They prefer to stay in the region they belong to. Even they move there, it's not that far, or not for the long term. They prefer to return. So that's is something which really brings me to think about the home as something which is connected to the area. Than to and coming back to Mirella's point about the peace agreement. I've scanned these documents you've have after the war was over, and I didn't find any definition of home in there. So it was a lot of definitions of peace, what is peace, and how to achieve the peace, but there was no definition of home. And I found it interesting discovering for myself, why is that? Because for me, as a person who also forcibly displaced with this experience, even repeatedly, for me this notion is more important than the idea of peace, because for me peace is really far, a more long-term plan rather than necessity to have a home. So I wish to see more discussion about these notions in debates now, rather than question how to achieve peace.
Thank you. This is really indeed very interesting what you are saying, because we very often deliberate on what is home for us and what we actually are missing when we are living now abroad. There are many refugees also here in Berlin, and there is always something missing. It will never feel the same, and we just want to go home. But what is it home? Tomorrow I'm going to Ukraine, but I don't necessarily feel the home that I used to have, that I will get tomorrow. So it's something in between. It's not there yet. The peace is not there yet. So what is missing and what we are striving for? It's a really good question. Thank you, Anastasiya, for bringing this up. I think there are many thoughts also from our audience. However, there is no unified strategy as of now, because Ukraine is huge. There are territories that are still occupied. There are cities that are completely destroyed. There are cities that are partially destroyed. There are cities that are just not equipped to accommodate people with the current needs, especially those people who are coming from the front line. The cities are not inclusive. So there are many different layers of what is expecting us to change, to modify, and to rebuild. However, there is one topic that is always very striking, is what do we do with the cities that are destroyed, or the cities that are wiped out, like the regions, cities in the Donetsk or Luhansk regions. Do we build this city from scratch, or how do we treat these territories? So this very complicated and also philosophical question I would like to finally ask you, Ladik. Sorry that you've been waiting here for so long without any questions. So now the stage is yours. Thank you.
Yeah, it's okay. So when we're talking about the reconstruction strategies and so on, we should think about this process as consistent of several phases. And as Anastasiya already pointed that out, that peace is far away, but we should do something now. So for the first phase, it's really important to determine this hierarchy of the needs of the people. We are starting with the security, like the mining activities and so on. Then we go to the housing, like the basic needs, social infrastructure, and then some working places, like few of the main topics that we should be concentrated on in the first phase. So for the government here, there's a lot of job. Can we define some direct measures, like Anastasiya also already said that in social housing we have like really small numbers, so it's a vector where we could definitely grow in the future. For the businesses, it could be some interactive tools like interactive map of vacancies, jobs in businesses that stayed or which are returned in a first wave. So to secure these businesses, to give the people opportunities to work there. Hello. And when we're talking about more strategical and long-term renovation and reconstruction processes, here I would like to point out three topics. First of all, it's like the most basic thing, like sustainable development. We already know what to do, so we just need to implement this in our planning, like compact cities, local tenders, micromobility, and so on. The only one thing that should be brought up here is can be really important for the post-industrial cities in the eastern region of Ukraine, like processes of urban settlement shrinkage, so the decrease of the population, like global trend for these post-industrial cities, but also the country in a post-war situation. So we should think about it and not orient us for the growth, for the goals, for the numbers, as Anastasiya also said already. The second topic is experience shows us that technical infrastructure and some other things like street network and so on can show surprisingly high level of resilience. So we can use it, we can reuse it. We have a lot of square meters that not now perhaps, but after some repair can be reused. So we cannot afford it to demolish these housings, these properties, just for some utopic ideas that will be brought up to down to build the best cities that we could. We should reuse what we already have as preserved parts of our cities. And the third topic is some important places, locations, and practices of the people that we use in these locations, like we should do work with the community, with the people that already returned, to know what was important for them, or locations, practices, do mental mapping of the courtiers. We should make deep interviews, surveys, workshops on site to make sure that we know what locations were really important for these people. They know it best, so we should just ask them and use all of our participatory methods that know. Here, perhaps some of you have seen photos from Lukashevka village in the Chernihiv region, or just line of the people stayed to the almost destroyed church. So for technical specialists, if a building is not ready to use, it's like ruins or something, but the people stayed in line to do the practices that were important in pre-war situation. So it's a clear sign for us planners that this place should be rebuilt. On how it will be rebuilt, reconstructed, renewed, rehabilitated, and so on, it will be a decision for architects, but the planners, we know that this place is important. Yeah.
Wow, that was a really comprehensive answer, Lari. Thank you so much. I'm really glad that this conversation is recorded, so afterwards I can take notes what you have said. Totally support us. You seem to have a really clear vision about our future, and I really want to be part of this future. I will now have a question to our experts on Bosnia and Herzegovina. You have observed the post-war recovery closely, and you also observed how the heritage was preserved. You observed how the cities were rebuilt or enhanced. Can you give us?
Sorry, I cannot hear you.
Oh,
My internet was weak. Could you repeat?
Helen, can you hear me? I'm just trying.
Yes, yeah, I can hear you fine.
Yeah, so I was saying that you have a great expertise on the path that Bosnia and Herzegovina has already achieved, and we wanted as Ukrainians to ask you what do you think we should do already now so we avoid some common mistakes, so we do not repeat some typical mistakes, and that so what should we do so we won't lose our heritage in the post-war recovery already on this at this time. So maybe Mirella, you would like to start if you could hear me. Helen?
Yes, I can
Okay.
hear you now. Yes, I can hear you now. In the post-war recovery, what is important? First of all, now, what was missing from us is a unified methodology to assess damages and destruction to our heritage. Council of Europe helped us after in some parties. The different institutions have their methodologies, but it is very important at the end that you have one methodology to assess all your heritage, movable and immovable as well. Why it is important? Because to find out the list of priorities you want to rehabilitate. Then, when Anastasiya was talking, the peace is so far away. But in this meantime, waiting for the peace, it is very important to have a very effective legislation. So to make it according to the latest conventions and resolutions of the UNESCO and of the Council of Europe. Also, it is why, because in my case that was an old law. In case of Bosnia and Herzegovina, it was the old law, and still we have no intangible heritage in our law, and how to protect intangible heritage. So it is important to revise your legislation as well, and also to see experts, to have a network of experts, and to assess the capacities of the institutions. And also, all the time, it is very, very important education, and to education of your staff, and also to involve local people in the kind of education that can help, like in traditional skills when it comes to the restoration. So it's very important that you have help from the people. Yeah, why? What is the home? Anastasiya asked. Home is not just your house. Home is your street, is your museum, is your church, is your mosque. Everything is your home. And when you want some quarter, urban quarter, for example, old urban quarter that people identified with, you have to involve them. And if you want to involve them in restoration, you have to make them available to do that restoration according to their capacities. So you have to raise these capacities. But then, in our case, it was very important now to establish all connections with potential donors as well. And then to also with the institutions, expert institutions like ICROM, ICOMOS, ICOM, it's very important to keep them above all the time about your needs. Then here in Berlin, you have wonderful German archaeological institute that have a movable laboratory for assessing the to make the first help to heritage when it is destroyed. It's also important to engage them with their movable laboratories so that they can help on the land, on the site as well. And what to say more? Yeah, and then not to allow urban planners and archaeologists to claim the space, because the urban planners in our cases wanted to make some with investors to make some new structures that will bring the money to investors. And it is very important to rehabilitate your sites. This that you find out the need to be rehabilitated. You have to establish certain criteria to find out what heritage needs to be rehabilitated. In some circumstances, it is impossible actually to reconstruct, because if you have no documentation how the building was looking before the war, before it was destroyed, you cannot reconstruct it. That's also very, very important. And what do archaeologists do? Archaeologists claim the space that something was older than the building that is destroyed is. So if the people identify according to the international principles from the conventions, each part of the history, each trace has to be respected. So don't allow your archaeologists to claim the spaces as only archaeologists' places if there are traces from the earlier history that people are identified with. So that was just a brief that came out from my mind. So if you have more questions, please.
Thank you, Mira. This is really very valuable, and again, I'm really glad that it's recorded, so we can always refer to your advice, your recommendations. Helen, maybe you would like to add something on that.
Well, I think it is important to have strong legislation, and one of the things that the commission, the members of the commission do, I'm sure Mirella's been on many, was that they would send people from the commission to preserve national monuments to, as the commissioners as a group, to various municipalities, and the municipalities tried to impress them, of course, about how fascinating and wonderful their cultural heritage was, but it was important, and I could see this kind of getting politicians, getting people like I assume there's central heritage bodies in Ukraine. I'm sorry, I don't know. That to visit some of these places to see the issues and see what local people think about it. Some places it was the local people who were doing the destroying. So I don't think that probably is true in Ukraine in the same way. That to get, it's getting politicians on board, because they're the people with influence, as politicians and people with money, developers. They're there. They have money. You could try your best, and someone will come along with no money, and that is what talks. It's money and power. And there was billions put into Bosnia and Herzegovina after the war, and a lot of it did go astray. A lot of it didn't go towards preserving monuments. Some of them got restored by not quite accident, though, because they were important buildings in themselves, structures in themselves. But it's still going on. It's now 30 years after the end of the war. It's still going on, trying to restore buildings there. and also the pressures from for developers and cities, it's more intense. So this is what the kind of pitfalls you have to be aware of. But it is getting those higher up the food chain on your side and to interest you. And there's also this thing, things have moved on. So, sustainable development goals, United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, how you fit into that. Humanitarian aid, how is that going to be implemented? And that was a problem in Bosnia, whereas they were just, people giving humanitarian aid would give funding towards, let's say, restoring houses or rebuilding houses, and it would be completely inappropriate for the locality. So, that's another thing, trying to be influential. Trying to be influential is important, and influential at higher levels of government. Yeah.
Thank you, Helena. I can only echo what you are saying, and indeed, there are a lot of work yet to be done in Ukraine, because now we hear there are many civil activists doing the work that is not done by government and by people in power. So this link between civil society and government and people, as you said, was money should be established in order to ensure that we can tackle the rebuilding process, the recovery process already from today. Now, someone was, Nastya, you wanted to add something?
Yeah, I just would like to share the short response to what we just recently said, because I really relate to this idea of rebalancing the existing power, wherein some of the sectors are really lacking of it, yeah, and it's true in Ukraine as well. And I do believe that this is one of the key for the successful reconstruction projects, is to set the rules, legislations, even also cultural ground for the project, where citizens and non-governmental organization initiatives has support. They have support. They have some instruments which empower them, because now they're for sure in a more fragile situation compared to states and market-driven agents. And if we will empower them and making sure that all of the sectors have a balanced instrument, I think this is something fundamentally needed for the successful reconstruction.
And I'll just say in smaller places, one place that I visited once in Herzegovina just after the end of the war, and there were these houses, and I thought, oh, they look just like, because I lived at one point in an army base in Canada that was, the homes for the officers, and I thought, oh, these look just like the houses we used to live in Canada. This is in Herzegovina, where it's mostly stone-built houses, and we talked to a woman who lived in it. Yes, they were built by a Canadian organization. So, and then I just in the middle of this stony limestone with all these old stone houses. Here were these houses that looked like they had been just put down from somewhere in Canada, and so it was. So this is, so it can have quite an impact in small places. If cities are one thing, but even just providing housing or rebuilding housing in small locations, it can be very important to have that kind of input and some kind of influence on humanitarian aid organizations, because they just have they have one thing in their mind, and they do give the money and they do get things done, but this sort of thing, it needs some kind of input.
Yeah, Mirella, you can say.
Yes, it is. And that is why it is needed to have a good coordination. Good coordination between different your local NGOs, and to coordinate with the government institutions. Without coordination, nothing can be done wrongly. So coordination is very, very important. So to establish mechanism for that coordination is important.
Thank you, Mirella. We'll work on that. I still have a question to our Ukrainian colleagues here, but I would also like to see if our audience has any questions, maybe more tricky ones that I have. So we can also give a chance to our visitors to address our experts here. So is anyone willing to address a question at the moment? Okay, I saw you were noting down all the time. So yeah, you want to take the mic.
Yeah, so you can also sit like stand behind the camera so they can see me. So this is
I was expecting to not be in the limelight, but
not everyone can
that's
see
not.
We need to see you.
That's not what I expected. Okay, so I have a question. I have a couple of questions, but I will ask one and then maybe I'll come back to my seat and ask again sometime later. But the question I have is for Mirella and Helen. Essentially, a lot of international organizations name the aspect of peacekeeping as one of the most important, if not the most important aspect in rebuilding of cultural heritage. And I wanted to ask about like specific example and in general, like, is it realistic? Does it work? And I had a privilege to recently visit Banja Luka, and like if we compare the rebuilding of Ferhatia, which started like a couple of years ago, decades actually, and then the rebuilding of Arnaudia, which started recently, sort of, was the resistance from the local communities and from the local authorities smaller in the second case or not? And like, did this all peacekeeping initiatives really work? Because just for the context, Banja Luka is the place where a lot of opposition to rebuilding, resistance to rebuilding occurred in Bosnia and Herzegovina. I hope that question is clear. Thank you.
So Mirella, you probably know more about the Arnaudia, but there certainly was resistance to rebuilding the mosques, and it was, became so, it was like, I think it was inevitable, because these, as Mirella mentioned, these laws were sort of enforced that the Srpska, in this case, authorities had to not delay rebuilding mosques. And that Ferhadia, though, I think even the Islamic community didn't want it to, the religious authorities often want things to be rebuilt very, very quickly. And this was obviously going to take quite some time. And it did. And then it was the Arnaudia, I don't know so much. I know it's being rebuilt, that's all I know. I don't know so much about the whole story. Maybe Mirella knows more if there was a lack. I think there was I'm sure there was resistance. I'm sure, but they were kind of legally, they couldn't stop it. I don't know.
Yes. Banja Luka is a place where all that was during the war under Serbs military forces, and all mosques were destroyed. So when reconstruction actually of Ferhadia Mosque should start, I know that one official from the office of the High Representative was even injured. So it was provided by the UNPROFOR, I think, reconstruction of actually this first attempt to reconstruct Ferhadia Mosque. But my commission to preserve national monuments got 10 years or 15 years ago, no, 10 years ago, got the small grant. We applied for the small grant from the American Ambassador Fund for Cultural Preservation to start digging, trying to find the remnants of Erkadia Mosque. Because the remnants of the Erkadia Mosque, when the mosques were destroyed, they were put on the depots with the garbage. So,
On a landfill site, on a
On the land.
garbage dump.
yes, garbage dump. Thank you. And then we collected and recorded them. Each of these remnants have got its ID card after we surveyed it. So that was a huge attempt, and also after the first attempt made by the commission to find out and survey the remnants, then the international help from the other donors, but also the policy of Republika Srpska was changed, and also they contributed to the reconstruction of the mosque. For the other Naudia mosque, that was no problem. And all other mosques, as I know, they are reconstructed or built new. But this unblaming one that was Arcadia Mosque, it was reconstructed. The other one, Arnaudia, is, I think, reconstruction is still on. So did I provide answer?
Well, I don't know. There is this sort of what do you call it? A trope in cultural heritage that rebuilding monuments brings peace and reconciliation, and in my experience, that has never happened. So, yeah. So I don't think it happens. I don't think it happens. I don't think there's peace and reconciliation in Banja Luka. It's just kind of tolerated that the Muslims are back and the Muslims are there and they're going to rebuild their mosques. But it's kind of different from Ukraine.
Yeah, but I don't think the problem is with ordinary people. I think it's a problem with the politics. Because the national politics, they are those who want to divide people, but people live together. Don't make problem.
Good.
If they are not forced to.
Thank you. Actually, Helen, thank you for the answer. That's what my cynical mind wanted to hear.
I am cynical too. Very cynical about that.
Should I bring back the mic? Does anyone want to? Okay. I'll come back.
Hello. I have a question, but first of all, I want to say thank you to the Commission of the Preservation of the Monuments and Heritage in Bosnia, because as I was reading about it, we can have a lot of really interesting lessons from the work of the Commission and a lot of really impressive and effective tools and mechanisms you're using in preservation of the heritage and giving people opportunity to nominate the monuments and to show people that their thoughts and their feelings are heard. So it's really cool. You have a lot of interesting examples and work done. I want to say thank you for this good experience. And I have a question to Elmira. While I was doing the research, I found out that there was examples of the like trying to work with the topography and toponyms on the territory and the landscapes, like the occupied territories of the Bosnian Serbs army. They were like trying sometimes to change names from the local ones to more Serbian ones. And as Ukrainian, I feel it some familiar one, some kind, because we have this process of decommunization in Ukraine, which is ongoing, and we are trying to change names to a regional one when they were switched a long time ago. And I have a question. How do you think Crimean cities should be renamed and called on the language of Crimean Tatars after the de-occupation? For example, at Mesquite instead of Simferopol.
Thank you very much for this question. You know that the issue of the renaming of, for Crimean Tatar people, and for me, of course, is the issue of the justice. Because this toponimic repression, they carried out by Soviet regime after deportation in 1944 in the peninsula. And most towns, villages, mountains, rivers that had indigenous Crimean Tatars names were assigned new Russian names. And that is why, for us, it is the issue of justice. And of course, Ukraine now, in the process of decolonization, and I know that we have some project of law to get rid of Soviet heritage. And if you saw in historical perspective between Crimea and Russia, we were for a long time as neighbors. And the name of our neighbors changed from Grand Duchy of Moscow, then it was Russian Empire, then it was Soviet Union, and finally it's the Russian Federation, but its aggressive foreign policy remained intact. And I'd like to say about the situation in 1783 when the Crimean Khanate was annexed by the Russian Federation. And the years following this capture were characterized by the progressive restriction on the Crimean Tatars' rights and freedoms, and etc. And the policy of USSR toward the Crimean Tatar people was exactly the same as the previous regime culminating in the 1944. And nowadays the Russian Federation is continuing the same policy toward the Crimean Tatar people. And the aim of this policy is the same, to make the Crimeans a part of Russian ideological paradigm and forcibly change the identity of the indigenous people, the Crimean Tatar people, and the cultural identity of the peninsula. And that is why it is, for me, the issue of justice firstly, and then it's the issue of decolonization. Because, you know, that maybe I add something in our discussion that was, that some comments to comments of Mirella. I 100% agree with these points of what we can do after war. But we have some very important challenges. First of all, I think the Ukraine should rethinking our cultural heritage, rethinking in order to get rid of these colonial historical narratives. First of all. Second, it's very important to create this joint legislation, and I agree with them, and we can do it now. We can incorporate some international standards, rules, regulations in our national legislation. It is too important because, and third, about collaboration, cooperation between different stakeholders, governmental bodies and non-governmental initiatives. I really have a doubt about this collaboration because the most advantages of Ukraine now is the social cohesion and strong NGO sector. But I hope that this pieces of advice, what we can do, help us to create strong policy from named 4R, that reconstruction, renovation, recovery, and rethinking, of course. And this rethinking, I think, is the main challenge for us. Thank you. And thank you for your question.
Thank you.
So is anyone willing to ask the question? I will still have someone who wants, but in case you don't want to. So, okay, Aaron, now you can answer.
Right then. I have a question to Olana, I think. Now, so following up on what Mirella said recently about the attempts to obstruct the rebuilding of cultural heritage by sort of violent communities first, but also local authorities not issuing permits and archaeological excavations being done on the sites. Do you expect yourself, so it's like a question for the future, that Ukraine will face a similar problem, maybe with, let's call them investors not interested in rebuilding of cultural heritage, trying to build something on the site instead of what was before? Do you expect something like that Ukrainians to face?
I'm sure you will. I'm sure that will happen.
We are preparing for that, of course. It's not about only war, demolishing buildings, of course, but I think we have we try to create such system when the investors, developments, and other people who want to, I don't know, reconstruct or rebuild historical architecture or something like that, they will have no another way to rebuild it. And it's also about rethinking what we have to rebuild, what we have to just renovate, and what have to be really new cities, new buildings, new spaces. And the truth is, it's about balance, of course. We can't save all, we can't rebuild all, but we have to save enough to save our identity, to save. It's also about commemoration and memorizing this war and all thing before. Yeah, it's about balance. I just forget my mind. Yeah.
Thank you. Anastasiya also wanted to say something about this.
I guess we also can think about there's, I would say, different approaches for the reconstruction, which of course not limited by the following I would like to share with you, but those I would like to share now, it's more for me representing a little bit the approach. This one is a Warsaw way. Yeah, when they after the World War II they reconstructed really a lot with, if I'm not mistaken, idea to really a little bit like giving the step back to this, like really stepping out of across the time and to show to the enemy that it's probably that it's never been there. So it's a kind of sort of for me a very extreme also, not that extreme but very close to the extreme of idea reconstruction. And the one is like I would call like a German style, when during the reconstruction there was like demolished even more building than during the war. That's very true for Köln, if I'm not mistaken, Dresden, and many other cities. And I think those experiences show us that the way the city could be reconstructed could be so different. And of course, that's why this, what Elmira said, this discussion about what about our value and finding the commons, like there's something we are agreed on as a society, and we could advocate these messages towards international partners and investors. I think this is an issue. So once we figure out as a community what is important for us, we could be easy. We could challenge ourselves, like protecting this idea more easily.
Thank you. So, Elmira, you wanted to add to that?
Yes, I think that it is very important to collect all examples of recovery and reconstruction after war, and find our own way to recovery and reconstruction. It is too important. And in this case, the report that prepared our colleagues are very important for us for thinking about this process in Ukraine and implemented in Ukraine.
I really enjoyed to speak about this after war investment to building, reconstruction, recovering, and something else. We have to speak what we can do now to have these objects to reconstruct or recover or part recover, something like that. And we here different international organizations can help us to protect first, like project construction for buildings, monuments, or something like that. Also for safe and to conserve this building or part of this building which were destroyed by time, by nice development, Ukrainian development, or Russian bombs. So it's we are here. We have to save something, to rebuild, reconstruct, and etc. in future in that I don't know, dreamy after war.
Thank you, and thank you all for engaging in answering this question. The stage is yours.
Thank you. It was a nice delegation. It's really easy having such nice guests. So we are approaching the end of our discussion, but I still have one question to our experts, also to our Ukrainian experts. And this topic of rebuilding of Ukraine becomes a buzzword now in Europe. There are many conferences, events, projects focused now on how to rebuild Ukraine. There are many delegates, lots of money, lots of energy, lots of resources into what will happen, what should happen in the future while Ukraine is still fighting, while we are still in this active war. And many Ukrainians, they perceive it quite skeptical because now all the energy should be concentrated on, on the winning of this war, on the occupying our territories, on the preserving the heritage. which is now being looted or destroyed, and you really perceive it quite skeptical when there's so much energy, especially on this international discourse focused on, okay, let's plan how to do this in like 10 years, 20 years, and but we are not sure if you will survive, So, however, there are some things that we already discussed a lot what should be done now, and I would like to ask our Ukrainian guests here what message you would like to pass to our international supporters, to our international friends that are really interested in rebuilding of Ukraine or recovery of Ukraine. So, what kind of message you would like to pass to them so they could, what they can do already, so they can really help us but not harm. Maybe we can start with you, Ladik.
Okay, I have a lot of colleagues here that will point out some stuff that can be done right now, that some stuff that can be done with the historical preservation, architectural preservation, housing, and so on. So, as an urban planner, I would like to say here that our European colleagues and all of the people that want to help should be brave, because it's like some kind of common misunderstanding or a mistake when experts from the West comes to Ukraine to help, and they are like stuck with the state of the laws in Ukraine or some kind of guidelines, governmental instruments, and so on, and they think, okay, we should do our projects only in this borders. So they are not providing us like some directions where we can go to be more future oriented. So perhaps what we can do even better than it's here, because we have some kind of other opportunities. So yeah, this is the message.
Okay. I think that I want to say that nothing for us without us. My main point is to build and develop connections and this consolidation with local Ukrainian initiatives, because this organization are working now. They are working more than 1 year. They supporting our government, supporting our country, which direct all state resource to our defense to become this after war closer. So this NGOs organization, one person initiative, not a lot of, but they need this support. So they need this investment of finance, of experting, of maybe some educational support and something like that, because someone or my colleagues say that Ukraine is about really strong NGO sector, and it became stronger and stronger, even when a lot of activists, a lot of person from Ukrainian NGO sector are on the war. But I was on little actions under our city government in Kyiv last week, when people went from Kyiv administration to direct all sources to the war, not for new streets or new bridges, for example. And I saw there a lot of really young faces, and it's the next generation, and they will keep our experience, and after them, somebody will keep it again. So I just want to ask everybody to support these people, to support us. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Yana. Anyone from the online community? Anastasiya?
No, close. Okay. Maybe here, I'd like to thank for supporting us. I'd like to say that all Ukrainians appreciate this support. And maybe my second message related with my work, with the documentation of the violations against cultural crimes. And I'd like to say that Ukrainian today is becoming a training ground for improving, revising, adapting, testing standards, methodologies designed corresponding to the challenges that the cultural heritage is facing in territories of large scale and active military operation. And of course, we are obliged to use the acquired experience, no matter if it was a positive case or if we made some mistakes or suffered some losses. But it is too important to update and develop the international system for responding to threats and losses of cultural values. Today, unfortunately, the flag of Black Shield or even this, how it will be in English, highest level of protection, they don't, unfortunately, they don't save from missiles attack. And that is why it is too important to develop, create, invent, I don't know, new tools, new mechanisms, or advance old tools, old mechanisms in order to protect cultural heritage in war zone. Thank you.
Thank you, Anastasiya?
I believe that we need this support badly because the scale of the scope of work is very huge. So we probably will, I witness like a lot of, a big diversity of the project and type of reconstruction in the future, and we need a lot of different kind of expertise. As we mentioned today, that our cities are very diverse now regarding their damage assessment and population status. So we really need a different approaches and methodologies, and not necessarily all Ukrainian experts could really reflect on that. But I do also agree with Juliana that they need to work with us, not for us, but with us. And probably the one more practical advice I would, I always tell it within any meeting I attend, that international partners need to look at the NGO as a reliable partners for them, not limit themselves only with to work with the municipalities. They often do that, but really consider non-governmental sector is a very powerful agent who can allocate resources, engage people, design, implement, provide participation, evaluation, research. So we've been trained for 8 years already, maybe 9 since Maidan, how to do this work. And we would like to see the relevant attitude towards us as a partner, not as a who can handle the project, who can really deliver the result. And I think this is something we need to tell out loud and many times, because in my observation, they are very stick to the municipalities as a main core agent to work with.
Thank you, Anastasia, and thank you everyone for your undeniably very, very valuable inputs and insights. There are many things that we still have to learn and learn how to collaborate and how to receive a much needed support from our international partners. We are grateful for everyone here in this panel and our online community and also offline, and everyone who came to listen. I hope that you learned something, and I hope that this experience, sharing of this experience, will help us design the environment that we all would like to live in. So lots of applause to our guests, our experts.